turban for Sikhs and things like that, you know, kufi or a hijab for Muslims, that's something that's, unless it's a safety hazard, it's allowed in the workplace.
Okay. And I mean, how successful are you in intervening?
Actually,
and
most of the time when we have people who we educate them, we understand what the practices are and what the law is, they're pretty, you know, they really usually go along with it, and they try to make accommodations necessary. There are times where we really need to make it sort of a legal action and have them, you know, in terms of going to the EEOC or consulting an attorney. But generally that's the minority of the times.
And so a majority of the cases you feel are not really based on bias, but just of ignorance about what Islam requires of Muslims.
That's right, ignorance of what Islam is and also of what their responsibilities under the law are. We're also trying to help people, especially the Muslim community, get a better understanding of the being active in the government here in terms of getting to know your elected representatives, understanding what the issues are, and then voting properly.
Yeah, but voting is, I mean, how important is it for Muslims to understand the need for them as Americans to make sure they have some say-so in who the people are elected to office, because, you know, maybe a lot of Muslims feel that they can't really affect any change or outcome. So how do you try to explain to the people it's important for them to get involved at all levels of government in voting?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, even on the national scale you have one vote versus you know several million people, hundreds of million people in the United States, but one vote counts, because as you looked in the last election or back in 2000, when so many votes you know came down to the wire and had to counted one by one, basically, you know, it really shows the power of one vote. And not just, but, you know, multiplying that within our community, making sure people understand the issues and basically what their representatives are standing for. That's what really we want to be. Even if, you know, we don't care what side they vote for, we just want to make sure they understand the process, that they're allowed to go and vote properly, and that they know the people they're voting for and what they stand for.
And some people, American and people from outside of America, they ask about the dawah in America and how it's going. And they sometimes ask me why we don't see so many Caucasian Muslims accept in Islam.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely a minority within the Muslims here in America. But I think it's something that's definitely needed. I think there's a lot of misperceptions that the media propagate here in America. So I think it's difficult for, especially, you know, Caucasians to really see through what's real in Islam, and that's something we try to do when we go out and talk to the community. We give presentations to law enforcement and to hospitals and other areas to just dispel the myths about Islam and Muslims, and just help them better understand the community that they're working in terms of when they run across Muslims, or whether it to be home or in maybe someone's praying in the car, they don't understand what they're doing. We try to explain that, you know, we have to pray 5 times a day, and sometimes you see a person, you know, doing sujood in the car, and maybe they don't understand why they're banging their head on the steering wheel. So, you know, that's the way we have to tell the law enforcement, you know, that and other people that, you know, this is just our beliefs, and this is how, you know, you may come across these in your daily life.
Right, and when you have these outreach activities, and you come to trying to address some of the points of misconceptions, what are the most important ones and common ones you always try to make sure you tackle?
Well, jihad is always a big one. The difference between Sunnis and Shias, you know, women's rights in Islam, those are the big 3, I guess you have to say right now. But the jihad word, you know, it's all over the news right now, and trying to dispel the myths about what it means, but in terms of holy war, which is a total misconception, but also the women's rights in Islam, and explain to them that, you know, women's are protected in Islam, and that you know, a lot of the abuses that we see are not because of the religion, it's in spite of the religion.
Alhamdulillah. Well, Brother Yusuf, very nice to meet you and very nice to talk to you.
Good.
And alhamdulillah, with care and all your other efforts, inshallah, Allah, He give you the success with that.
Thank you.
But before we conclude, I'd just like to ask you now, as a Muslim since 1996,
That's right, here
in America, you've seen Islam grow, and I want to know from you, what do you think is the future outlook for Islam in America?
There's a lot of struggle here, but I think the future looks bright. As long as we, you know, stick to our principles as being a good Muslim and our principles in Islam, I really think that we have a bright future in America.
Okay, Brother Yusuf, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I hope that our viewers are able to take a little bit a bit more insight of what life is like for Muslims here in the United States of America. I've been doing programs like this for quite a number of years now, and interviewing people and asking their stories about how they came to Islam. And a lot of people often ask me, what's my story and how I came to Islam? And for this program, The World of Islam, we've come to Atlanta, Georgia. And Atlanta and another city in Georgia, Macon, Georgia, and Warner Robins, Georgia. It was really important places for me in my Islamic development, so I thought maybe this is the appropriate place maybe to talk about my story and how I came to Islam. Even though I was born Muslim, my mother and father are Muslim. My father converted to Islam in the late 50s, and when he and my mother got married, she was Muslim. So we were born Muslim, but unfortunately in growing up, we didn't really know a lot about Islam and a lot about the religion. We knew that we don't eat pork and we don't drink, but the more important things about Islam, we really grew up not being aware of. And some years went by, and that was my state, that I was Muslim, and I didn't really know much about my religion. So I was born Muslim, but I was just like any other convert to Islam, is that just because I was born Muslim didn't mean I necessarily had the correct information of all the important things that a Muslim should know. So some time went by, and I was in the military. I was a communications engineer, and I was stationed here in Georgia in another place called Warner Robins, Georgia. And I remember on that base, I met a man. His name was Shamsuddin, and he was working in the chaplain's office. He was a Muslim, and he was working in the chaplain's office, which I thought was strange at the time. But I met him, and mashallah, he was a nice brother, and he told me about in Macon, Georgia, there was a mosque, and in Warner Robins, Georgia, there was a mosque where the Muslims come together. And up to that point, I had very rarely been to the mosque and been in the company of other Muslims. So alhamdulillah, I went to that place and I met the brothers, and I was very happy finally to kind of reconnect with other Muslims. And every talk, everything they said was just a revelation to me, which are just basic things about Islam, which I was hearing for the first time. And I remember I used to go and I used to pray with them. And I remember one day there was an older brother there. His name was Yaqub Ali, and he was from Guyana. And after prayer one time, he said to me, I want you to come to my house. I need you to help me with something. And I said, okay, fine, because he lived near me. So I went to his house one day, and he took me like in his study, and he put some prayer rugs out. He said, I'm going to show you how to pray. And to a Muslim who was old as I was, you would think that would be something embarrassing, for somebody to say, I'm going to teach you how to pray. And I remember I didn't say anything because he was exactly right. I did know how to pray. And he showed me how to pray. And alhamdulillah, I hope Allah rewards that brother. And just in the hikmah and the way he handled it, He didn't say anything in front of the other people. He invited me to his house, and he taught me something which was very important for a Muslim to know how to pray. So from that point, I really started to have a better appreciation for Islam. And it progressed to the point where I started reading more and understanding more about Islam. And at that time, I was in the Air Force. Like I said, I was a communications engineer, and the first Gulf War started. And we really didn't think we were going to be sent there, to Saudi Arabia or any other place. But one day they told us, we thought we were going for a training exercise. They told us to get ready, you're going to Saudi Arabia. We thought that was just part of the exercise to make it seem more realistic. And we got on the plane and we put all our gear in, and about after 6 or 7 hours, because usually we would just fly around and we would land.